he will almost never be the first to say, "I love you." Not because those feelings are missing, but because the feelings themselves frighten him more than the idea of losing the relationship. And somewhere in your connection, he may already be revealing that truth in a hidden way through 4 very specific phrases that seem ordinary, seem harmless, and seem easy to overlook. Yet beneath those simple words is the strongest confession an emotionally distant man is usually able to make. Today we are exploring the 4 things a distant man says when he has quietly, deeply, and genuinely fallen in love with you. Not the dramatic promises, not the intense excitement that often appears at the beginning. These are the real signs. The ones that escape almost without him realizing it. They often come late at night. They often appear right after he tried to pull away, but found that he simply could not. If you have heard even one of these 4 phrases, stay with me until the end, because the order they appear in can reveal exactly how close he is to fully opening his heart to you. And once you recognize the pattern, what happens next becomes much easier to understand. Keep watching, because the final signs often surprise people the most. They reveal far more than they seem to on the surface. Many women involved with emotionally distant partners spend months, and sometimes even years, trying to understand mixed signals that never seem to make sense. One day he is warm, thoughtful, and present. He texts first. He makes plans. He seems excited to spend time together. Then, without warning, the energy changes. He becomes quiet. He creates distance. He suddenly feels almost like a different person. The hardest part is not the distance itself. Distance is easy to recognize. What creates confusion is the warmth that appears right in the middle of that distance. It comes unexpectedly. It feels sincere. It lasts only a short time before disappearing again, leaving you wondering if you imagined it. That warmth is not random. It follows a pattern that many people never notice. Once you understand that pattern, the relationship stops feeling like a puzzle you cannot solve and starts becoming something you can move through with much more confidence and peace of mind. Before we continue, I would like you to do one small thing. If you are in a relationship with someone who struggles with emotional closeness and you are trying to understand instead of simply reacting, type the word "seen" in the comments right now. Not loved, not liked, just seen. That single word tells me these conversations are reaching the people who truly need them, and it helps me continue creating videos that offer real value. Stay until the end, because the final phrase is often the one that changes everything. To understand these hidden messages, we first need to understand why saying simple words of love can feel almost impossible for someone like this. Why can he not simply admit how he feels, the way many others do? Why does expressing love seem to carry such a heavy emotional cost? For someone with this pattern, love never felt completely safe. At some point early in life, depending on another person, may have led to disappointment, rejection, emotional neglect, or pain. Perhaps a parent was unavailable. Perhaps affection was given only under certain conditions. Perhaps every attempt to seek comfort ended with loneliness instead. Over time, his mind developed one powerful rule that helped him survive. Never depend too deeply on anyone, because the people who matter most are also the ones who can hurt you the most. This is not something he deliberately chose. It became a protective response built over many years. His mind and body slowly learned to connect deep emotional closeness with emotional danger. As a result, the moment a relationship becomes truly important, an inner alarm begins to sound. Instead of moving closer, his first instinct is often to create space before imagined pain has a chance to arrive. This is why he may seem relaxed and open during the early stages, when everything still feels easy, yet become more distant as genuine love grows. It is not always because his feelings became weaker. Often it is because those feelings became stronger than he knows how to handle. For a long time, this emotional strategy protected him. It helped him feel safe. It gave him a sense of control over situations that once caused pain. Then someone entered his life who slowly challenged that old system. Without expecting it, he began to care more deeply than he intended. Part of him wanted to stay protected, while another part wanted to move closer. That inner conflict created tension he could not easily explain. From his perspective, falling deeply in love does not simply feel exciting. It can also feel risky, because it means trusting someone with the power to affect his emotions in ways he has spent years trying to avoid. Instead of speaking those feelings directly, they begin to appear through small comments and quiet moments that often slip out before he can stop them. Sometimes he even wishes he had not said them. The first phrase usually sounds something like, "I don't want to lose you." Notice what he does not say. He does not immediately say, "I love you," or "I need you," because those words leave him feeling completely exposed. Saying he does not want to lose you feels safer. It sounds practical. It sounds almost casual. Yet underneath those simple words is something much deeper. He is quietly admitting that your presence has become important enough to fear your absence. And for someone who has spent years protecting himself from emotional dependence, that simple sentence may be one of the biggest confessions he has ever made. Keep watching, because the next phrase reveals an even deeper level of emotional trust. But think carefully about what that sentence really means. You cannot fear losing something unless you have already become emotionally connected to it. Loss only matters when attachment already exists. For a man with an avoidant pattern to admit that he does not want to lose you, he first has to admit to himself that you have become someone important enough to miss, someone whose absence would truly affect him. That is far more meaningful than it may sound. It is his deeper mind quietly lowering its defenses for just a moment. What makes this phrase so easy to overlook is the timing. It rarely appears during a peaceful, romantic moment. More often, it comes after tension, after an argument, after you stop chasing him, after you step back, or after he realized that you might actually walk away. People with this attachment style often become fully aware of their feelings only when the possibility of losing someone suddenly feels real. So if you have ever created a little distance and then heard him say, "I don't want to lose you," or "I don't want us to end," pay close attention to what happened beneath those words. His protective system reacted to the thought of life without you. For one brief moment, his usual emotional wall became weak enough for the truth to come through. Stay with me, because the next part explains why so many people misunderstand this moment completely. The biggest mistake many people make is treating that sentence as if it automatically means lust and commitment. It does not. Instead, think of it as valuable information. It tells you that emotional attachment is present. It does not automatically mean he has learned how to handle that attachment in a healthy, steady way. The important part comes afterward. Watch what follows those words. Does he become more consistent? Does he communicate more openly? Does he begin showing up with actions instead of only emotions? Or does the fear slowly disappear, allowing him to return to old habits the moment he feels safe again? That repeating cycle, fear, emotional confession, temporary closeness, then withdrawal, is exactly what keeps so many women trapped in confusion. They experience a man who seems emotionally available only when he believes he might lose them. Picture a familiar situation. You have stayed quiet for a couple of days because he cancelled plans once again without giving much of a reason. You are not trying to punish him. You are simply protecting your own peace. Then your phone lights up with a short message. Maybe it says, "I know I've been distant, but I really don't want to lose you." That message was probably not written from a calm, balanced place. It came from fear. It came from the sudden realization that his usual habit of pulling away might actually cost him someone who truly matters this time. While that fear is uncomfortable for him, it teaches you something important. It shows exactly where his emotional limit begins. Keep watching, because the next phrase often reveals an even deeper level of trust than this one. The second phrase is much easier to miss because it usually happens when his emotional defenses are naturally lower. Often it appears late at night, during a quiet conversation when everything feels calm and there is less pressure. The words usually sound like, "I've never told anyone this before." Those simple words carry enormous meaning. For someone who struggles with emotional closeness, vulnerability does not feel exciting or romantic. It feels risky. From a young age, showing weakness may have felt unsafe, so hiding emotions became the safer choice. When he says, "I've never told anyone this," before sharing something deeply personal, a painful memory, an old fear, a regret, or a source of shame, he is doing something that goes directly against years of emotional self-protection. Think about what emotional distance has been helping him preserve all this time. It protects the image that he is strong. It protects the feeling that he always has everything under control. Many emotionally distant men become experts at appearing independent. They are the ones everyone else depends on. They rarely become the person asking for comfort themselves. So when he lets you see the part of him that still hurts, the part that feels uncertain or wounded, he is communicating something powerful without ever saying the words, "I love you." What he is really saying is that you feel safer than almost anyone else has ever made him feel. That quiet trust often speaks louder than dramatic declarations ever could. One of the easiest ways to recognize this pattern is by watching what happens immediately after he opens up. Very often there is a noticeable shift. He becomes quieter. He suddenly changes the subject. He reaches for his phone. He stands up. He walks into another room. Sometimes he physically creates distance, only seconds after revealing something meaningful. That reaction is easy to misunderstand. It usually is not regret about trusting you. More often, it is discomfort with feeling emotionally exposed. His protective system is trying to rebuild the emotional space that disappeared for a moment. If you respond by pushing for more conversation, asking many questions, or trying to deepen the emotional moment before he is ready, he may shut down almost immediately. But if you stay calm, acknowledge what he shared, and simply thank him for trusting you without making the moment heavier than it already feels, you help teach his nervous system something new. You show him that honesty does not automatically lead to criticism, rejection, or emotional pain. That lesson is incredibly valuable. Many people become confused here because they hear a deeply personal confession and immediately believe it means he is completely ready for a lasting relationship. Sometimes that is true. Other times, that single moment of openness is followed by weeks of distance while he tries to regain emotional balance. Real progress is not measured by one vulnerable conversation. It is measured by whether he can remain emotionally connected afterward without pulling away from you or from himself. Imagine the scene. The room is quiet, the lights are dim. You are sitting together with no pressure to talk. Then, almost unexpectedly, he begins sharing a story from years ago that he has carried in silence for a very long time. His voice softens. He hesitates. When he finishes, there is a long pause, almost as if he is waiting to discover whether you will judge him or use his honesty against him. If your response is gentle and simple, something as small as, "Thank you for trusting me with that," instead of turning the moment into hours of emotional discussion, you give him powerful evidence that being fully seen does not have to end in pain. And for someone who has spent years protecting himself from emotional closeness, that quiet experience can mean more than any carefully planned romantic gesture ever could. Now let's move to the third phrase, and this is one that many people misunderstand because it often sounds ordinary when it is actually one of the clearest signs of genuine emotional attachment. The third phrase is, "You don't have to chase me, I'm not going anywhere." At first, it sounds like simple reassurance, and in many ways it is. But what makes these words important is the emotional effort it takes for him to say them without being pushed. A man with an avoidant attachment style usually tries to stay away from direct conversations about feelings, commitment, or the future. Those discussions make him uncomfortable because they require emotional exposure. His natural instinct is to avoid them whenever possible. So when he brings up reassurance on his own, without you asking, without tears, without an argument forcing the conversation, it deserves your attention. There is usually something deeper happening beneath the surface. At some point, he noticed a change in you. Maybe you stopped sending the first message every day. Maybe you no longer kept asking when you would see each other again. Maybe you simply became quieter because you were protecting your own heart after feeling disappointed too many times. Instead of enjoying that extra distance, something unexpected happened inside him. He became uneasy. He felt the uncomfortable fear that only appears when someone important slowly begins slipping away. That feeling pushed him to say something his instincts normally keep hidden. "You don't have to chase me. I'm not going anywhere. Stay with me," because what comes next explains how to tell whether those words are backed by real change or simply temporary emotion. As meaningful as this phrase can be, it should still be viewed with balance. Sometimes it comes from a place of genuine growth. Other times it appears as an automatic response designed to keep you from leaving without requiring him to change anything about his behavior. The easiest way to tell the difference is not by listening to the sentence itself, but by watching everything that happens afterward. During the following days and weeks, does he become more reliable? Does he reach out more often without waiting for you? Does he begin making plans and keeping them? Does his communication slowly become steadier? Or does that reassurance simply calm your fears long enough for him to fall back into the same cycle of emotional distance once he feels safe again? Anyone can say comforting words when they are afraid of losing someone. The real question is whether those words are followed by consistent actions. There is another version of this reassurance that carries even greater meaning because it appears before any conflict has started. Imagine mentioning, almost casually, that you have been feeling uncertain about where the relationship is heading. Instead of becoming defensive or changing the subject, he pauses, looks at you, and quietly says something like, "You never have to question where I stand. You don't need to chase this." When reassurance comes before emotional damage instead of after it, it often suggests a higher level of emotional awareness. It shows that he is beginning to recognize your fears before they grow into bigger problems rather than waiting until everything has already fallen apart. That small difference can reveal meaningful progress that words alone could never fully explain. Now we arrive at the fourth phrase, and when it is sincere, it is one of the hardest things for an emotionally distant man to fake because it reveals something happening beneath the level of conscious control. The phrase sounds something like, "I thought about you today, even though I didn't want to." Those final words change everything. Most people simply say, "I was thinking about you." It sounds warm, it feels natural. There is no struggle hidden inside it. But when he adds, "even though I didn't want to," He is revealing an inner battle that few people ever get to see. He is admitting that part of him tried not to think about you. He tried to stay busy. He focused on work. He distracted himself. He attempted to push the thoughts away because closeness still makes him uneasy. Yet despite all those efforts, your presence remained in his mind anyway. That matters because emotional distance is rarely the absence of feelings. More often, it is the habit of suppressing feelings that already exist. Beneath the emotional walls, there is often just as much longing, affection, and attachment as anyone else experiences. Sometimes there is even more, because those emotions have been held back for so long. When he admits that thoughts of you continued despite his attempts to stop them, he is quietly acknowledging that his emotional defenses are no longer fully in control. Keep watching, because the final insight explains why this confession often arrives later than every other sign. If you have ever heard this particular sentence, pay close attention not only to the words, but also to the way he delivers them. Does he seem slightly uncomfortable? Does he look almost embarrassed after saying it? Does he laugh nervously or quickly change the subject? Those reactions may seem strange, but they often point toward genuine emotion rather than performance. When someone has spent years protecting themselves from emotional closeness, real breakthroughs rarely look polished or perfectly timed. They usually feel awkward, they sound hesitant, there may even be frustration in his voice because he cannot fully understand why he keeps thinking about you despite trying not to. Ironically, that imperfection is often what makes the moment believable. People who are intentionally manipulating emotions usually sound smooth, confident, and carefully prepared. Their words arrive exactly when they know they will have the greatest effect. Genuine emotional openness is rarely that neat. It tends to be uncertain, reluctant, and unexpectedly honest. That is one reason this fourth phrase usually appears later than the others. By the time he reaches the point of admitting that you occupy his thoughts even when he tries to resist them, he has often already shown several of the earlier signs in quieter ways. His emotional defenses are beginning to lose their grip, and although he may still struggle with fear, his attachment has become too strong to hide completely. That quiet confession often says far more than a simple declaration of love ever could, because it reveals not only what he feels, but also the internal battle he has been fighting every step of the way. Unwanted, automatic thoughts about someone are often one of the strongest signs that attraction has grown into genuine emotional attachment. At that stage, his mind is no longer responding only with curiosity or interest. It has started connecting your presence with comfort, familiarity, and emotional reward in ways his usual protective habits cannot completely block. He may still choose to create distance. He may still hold back his words or act more reserved than he truly feels. But what becomes much harder to control is how often you naturally enter his thoughts. That involuntary quality is exactly what makes this final phrase so meaningful, and it is also why saying it out loud often feels more difficult for him than saying anything else. So now you have all four phrases together. I don't want to lose you. I've never told anyone this before. You don't have to chase me. I'm not going anywhere. And finally, I thought about you today, even though I didn't want to. Each sentence by itself represents a small opening in emotional walls that have existed for years. But when several of them appear within a relatively short period, they often suggest that his emotional attachment has grown stronger than his usual avoidance can comfortably contain. Stay with me, because the next part is the most important lesson of all, and it is the one many people overlook when they become focused only on whether the feelings are real. As meaningful as these phrases are, they should never be mistaken for the finish line. They reveal genuine emotion, but they do not automatically prove emotional readiness. A man can sincerely care about you, even deeply, and still struggle to build the kind of steady, dependable relationship you deserve. Love and emotional capacity are not the same thing. Confusing the two can lead to years of waiting for changes that never fully arrive. The real question is not simply whether he has feelings. The more important question is whether he is willing to face the uncomfortable work of staying emotionally present, even when closeness feels overwhelming. Real growth is not dramatic. It is usually quiet and consistent. It looks like remaining engaged during difficult conversations instead of shutting down. It looks like offering reassurance before fear becomes a crisis. It looks like choosing openness repeatedly instead of allowing vulnerability to appear only during rare emotional moments. If these four phrases show up only after arguments, after periods of distance, after you begin pulling away, or after he fears losing you, but nothing changes in everyday life, then what you are seeing is emotional attachment without emotional growth. And attachment without growth creates repeating cycles instead of lasting security. That difference matters more than almost anything else. This is often where two different attachment patterns become locked together in a cycle that feels powerful but slowly becomes exhausting. If you recognize yourself here, listen carefully to this part. Perhaps you feel closest to him immediately after a period of distance. Maybe the relief of reconnecting feels so intense that it convinces you the relationship is becoming stronger. It is worth asking yourself whether those emotional highs have quietly become part of what love feels like to you. When one person withdraws, the other naturally feels the urge to move closer. Then, when reassurance finally arrives, the relief can feel almost overwhelming. That emotional release is often mistaken for deep intimacy, even though it may simply be the end of temporary fear. Neither person necessarily creates this pattern on purpose. It often develops without either of them realizing it. But recognizing the cycle gives both people the chance to choose something healthier. A calmer relationship is not an empty relationship. It is not less meaningful or less passionate. It is simply more stable, more predictable, and much easier to build a future on because emotional safety replaces constant uncertainty. Keep watching because this final reminder may be the one you remember long after this video ends. There is one more thing I want to say, because someone listening today probably needs to hear it. You are allowed to want more than occasional moments of vulnerability. You are allowed to hope for consistency instead of depending on emotional breakthroughs that happen only once in a while. Learning to recognize these four phrases does not mean you owe endless patience while someone decides whether they are ready to build the relationship you need. It simply gives you clearer language for what you may have sensed all along. The feelings may be genuine, even if the daily behavior has not yet reflected them. What you choose to do with that knowledge is entirely your decision. Maybe you decide to wait. Maybe you create healthier boundaries. Maybe you ask for greater consistency before investing even more of yourself. Whatever choice you make, remember to pay as much attention to your own emotional patterns as you do to his. Ask yourself whether your sense of worth has quietly become tied to whether he eventually learns to love you in the way you have been hoping for. Healing is not only about understanding another person's fears, it is also about recognizing your own habits, the moments when you minimize your needs, excuse repeated inconsistency, or convince yourself that small signs of progress are bigger promises than they really are. Your needs matter too. Wanting steady communication, reliability, and emotional presence does not mean you are asking for too much. A relationship where only one person's fears receive careful attention will never feel truly balanced, no matter how strong the feelings underneath may be. If this discussion helped you understand these relationship patterns more clearly, then stay connected because every new video explores the hidden psychology behind emotional distance, mixed signals, and the behaviors that often leave people feeling confused. The goal is not simply to decode someone else's actions, but to help you respond with confidence instead of uncertainty. Before you leave, share your experience in the comments. Which of these four phrases have you actually heard? Was it the fear of losing you, the deeply personal confession, the unexpected reassurance, or the admission that you stayed on his mind even when he tried to focus elsewhere? Your story may help someone else realize they are not facing these questions alone, and sometimes that understanding is exactly where real healing begins.